I'll call the meeting, I'll call the meeting to order. And item 1.1 is a conflict of interest declaration. Councillor Simpson.
Your Worship, for the Delegation 5.1, he does have it listed there for Civic Square. So if it comes up to a point that I need to recuse myself, I will step out at that time then.
Thank you. Okay, that'll be so noted. And then we have two new faces in amongst us today. And I'll introduce two gentlemen. Russ Tanner, Director of Recreation and Community Services, this fine gentleman here. And he rocks my look really well. And then we have Jason Seaman, and he's project manager. So Jason got to the mic first. So.
Hi. I'd like to thank everyone for the warm welcome I've received thus far, and definitely looking forward to the opportunity and working here for a long time. So thank you, everyone. Yeah, yes, through the chair to council, and his worship did ask that we be a little bit brief, so I'll honor that for sure. And just wanted to introduce myself. I'm Russ Tanner. Look forward to bringing the experiences I've had that you've maybe read about a little bit, and making sure that those contribute to the future of the town of Coaldale. And so I'll see you a little bit later tonight, and we'll talk more about that. But that's me.
We have the adoption of the agenda. Is there any items to be added, or I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda as presented? Councillor Lloyd moves the agenda as presented. Any discussion? All in favor? That's carried unanimously. And then we have regular council meeting minutes of September 14th, 2020. Are those in order? Councillor Holm?
And it's circulated.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councillor Holm to move the minutes as circulated. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. And we have a delegation, so I'll ask that Alana. Okay, good evening, Mr. Ryan. Thank you for joining us tonight. We're here to listen to what you have to say about a municipal inspection, and we have allotted you up to 15 minutes for you to speak. The floor is yours.
Good evening, and thank you for allowing me to speak with you this evening. I have 7 points I wish to bring up with you. Also, when I speak regarding the Civic Square project, the expression of interest document will not be part of my discussion, and I would encourage Councillor Simpson to remain in council chambers, as I feel it's important for her to hear what I have to say. ultimately it's her decision to recuse, will be hers. Citizens for a Better Coaldale. Who are we? We are a group of residents that believe the foundation of a vibrant and prosperous Coaldale is transparent governance supported by ongoing constructive dialogue between Coaldale Town Council and its residents. We advocate for meaningful public engagement, especially for major capital projects that should be influenced by community consultation and input. We are concerned about the future taxation, town management, town council decision-making, major capital projects, treatment of town employees, public communication, and engagement. Number 2, public engagement. As you know, there is much turmoil and dissatisfaction with many residents regarding Coaldale Town Council. There is now 4 years between civic elections, too long a gap for an open dialogue with citizens. When do taxpayers ever have the opportunity to ask questions to elected officials in an open public forum where everyone can listen? There aren't any, and this is part of the problem. For me to come to this meeting tonight requires a formal request, a request by administration to submit my detailed speaking notes in advance. Is this the definition of accessibility and dialogue? Do all citizens need to go through this extreme to be officially heard by Coaldale Town Council? It is not possible or realistic to communicate with many residents this way. Unfortunately, there has been a recurring theme of lack of public engagement and poor public communication by Town Council. People feel Town Council is disconnected from taxpayers when there needs to be open dialogue. There has not been open dialogue, and therefore people feel Coaldale Town Council has gone off the rails. Emailing members of council or meeting them individually does not count. I am speaking of a town hall meeting where you listen as people ask questions. People are angry with Coaldale Town Council over several decisions over the past 3 years, all revolving around complete disregard for public engagement. Coaldale has a public participation policy that infers that bigger the project, the greater the degree of public engagement. This is clearly not taking place. People do not want to just be informed after a council unilaterally makes a major decision. Residents want to be actively engaged about where, when, and how their tax dollars are being spent before multi-million-dollar projects decisions are being made. For example, would residents prefer a new town office building over a new outdoor swimming pool? Or where should a rec center / high school be located? The Civic Square project. This is the biggest project for Coaldale's Main Street in our 100-year history. This project should meet the requirements for extensive public engagement. This has not taken place, and people have many unanswered questions. For example, is the new town office really that urgent compared to other capital needs like a new outdoor pool or a second sheet of ice? Are there any other options for Main Street revitalization? Why has there been no public input on what the design could look like? Why haven't we been asked where public gathering spaces will be located? What sort of public events will take place and when? For such a major project, why wasn't the public involved early on? And why didn't the town bring in a professional consultant to guide a public input process before the project even got started? A most basic concept about any major public project is to get the public enthusiastically supportive of the project first, not tell them about it after decisions have already been made. This appears to be taking place repeatedly on all major town projects. How can the town of Coaldale call it revitalizing Main Street when they are evicting business owners so that they can build their new town office. I have spoken with several of the affected business owners, and it stands now they do not have the fight left in them to continue and ultimately will close or move to Lethbridge, which two have already done. In business, 40 years, Delo's Pizza, the longest running restaurant in the history of Coaldale, is closing to make room for the new town office. Sure, they talked about retiring, but when the time comes, they want to do it on their terms, not yours. Even when they wanted to stay, would they be able to afford their rent in the new commercial space? To date, the town of Coaldale has spent over $2.2 million on land purchases for this project. It appears there are still 3 more parcels of land that are needed to be purchased. When were you planning on informing the taxpayers of all these land purchases, or asking for taxpayers' opinions? The town survey, or the survey completed by the Citizens for a Better Coaldale. Our own survey, that is part of your agenda package for this evening's meeting, shows 79.8% of the 736 respondents were unhappy with the site selection for the new rec center / high school. Also, in a recent survey completed by the town of Coaldale as part of the new town plan, confirmed the same concerns about Site A and as well as the Civic Square project. Looking at the survey, the comments come back as on your survey, concerns include ensuring the town provides transparency and new developments. Better communication and transparency from council was identified as the primary concern of residents. It was the top survey response on a town survey. Immediate town projects such as the location of the new school rec center was a primary topic of concern for residents, again, on a town survey. Respondents expressed concerns with other major projects, in this case the Civic Square project, another town of Coaldale survey. Councils have stated many times they believe their choice of Site A is supported by the vast majority of residents. These surveys state the opposite, that this is not the case. So what are you going to do about that? Why wasn't this even talked about at the last council meeting when the survey results were presented? Why do you not even ask questions of administration? I kid you not, there are times when I'm at council meetings that I want to just reach out and check for a pulse because no one asks a question when the question needs to be asked. Number 5, land is being purchased and or sold without adequate public advertising or input. Many people feel there is too much secrecy about land development and major projects. As stated above, when were you planning on informing the taxpayers that you spent over $2.2 million to date purchasing properties on Main Street for your revitalization project? Also, why are large parcels of town-owned land being sold without public knowledge, input about land use, or not even being advertised for sale? For example, the 21 acres of open land owned by the town of Coaldale, referred to as the Corny Martins property on the north side of Lando Lakes Golf Course. I understand this parcel of land is in the process of being sold without advertising the parcel for sale at public tender. Why weren't councillors' intentions to sell this parcel privately to a developer made public? Following minimum Municipal Government Act guidelines for public advertising, land sales is not good enough. Some local business people are angry they did not know the town was offering this property for sale. Why wasn't there even a newspaper article saying the town was looking for expressions of interest for the offering and what might be built there? Why didn't the public or adjacent neighbors have some say in how these lands would be utilized? Coincidentally, this parcel of land was also referred to as Site C as a possible location for the new rec center / high school. by conveniently selling it, thus taking it out of play. I spoke with the Corney Martins family this morning regarding the sale of the family land to a private developer, and to say the least, they were distraught. The family's intent was for the town of Coaldale to develop and not only reap the financial benefits, but also to produce diverse community opportunities for all Coaldale residents to enjoy. Their intent was not for the land to be resold to a private developer. In general, a municipal inspection will address our taxpayers' concerns / complaints valid? All these taxpayer questions and concerns need to be reviewed independently. It is important not to mischaracterize our request for a municipal inspection. Unfortunately, this is already happening. For example, days before this meeting this afternoon with my request, I was informed of one member of Coaldale Town Council already making inaccurate and disparaging remarks days before my appearance tonight. Last week on Wednesday, a member of Town Council was at Tim Hortons speaking to a group of local residents about my appearance tonight. The councillor in question was saying, or at least leading people to believe, Jack Van Ryn wants to bring in the Minister of Municipal Affairs to investigate the town of Coaldale for being underhanded. This is inaccurate and misleading, and this sort of thing happens frequently with other councillors or their spouses as well. This represents inappropriate council misconduct. Statements like these go to the heart of the issue at hand. The relationship between Coaldale Town Council and their residents is broken and needs to be mended. With everyone's cooperation, a municipal inspection can deliver many positives all around. With Coaldale Town Council's cooperation and blessing, a municipal inspection would be an invaluable relationship building, confidence building exercise with your constituents. If council and administration are proud of their work and accomplishments, and if you feel you are doing the superb job you often advocate, a municipal inspection should vindicate you and silence the criticism from vocal residents, including the Citizens for a Better Coaldale. One of the arguments that will undoubtedly be raised against having a municipal inspection is the cost. After speaking with personnel at Alberta Municipal Affairs and also at the Minister's office, a cost for a municipal inspection for the town of Coaldale might range from approximately $50,000 to $150,000 depending on the amount of review needed. For example, based on an estimated population of 8,000 people, a $100,000 cost would be $12.50 a person. If Coaldale Town Council is correct in its previous statements that many citizen concerns are unfounded exaggerations, the inspection should be short, and the cost of the inspection should cost in the lower end of the range. For the same reason, Council has recently stated above how being a good time to spend on major town capital projects, the same reasoning applies to the investment in municipal inspection. For example, due to the soft economy with a shortage of work currently available, the cost to hire / pay for the consultants should be competitively lower. Dollars could be utilized from town reserves, especially since there is more of a one-time, non-planned expenditure for this project. The inspection could reveal many ways for possible savings in town expenditures. With the lowest interest rates in history, it is a good time to borrow for the right reasons. The town should also have surplus dollars available, since earlier this year it was stated it had achieved significant savings by lowering staff levels and outsourcing a number of positions and duties performed by town staff. In other words, the benefits would far outweigh the cost. With the recommendations the inspection would produce, this exercise would be a valuable investment in the Coaldale future, providing clarity and problem solving and positive community relationship benefits, and would offer a roadmap for a better future. I have 5 paragraphs left. Can I finish my last page? In conclusion, in the end, it's all about the betterment of Coaldale, and tonight I ask you to demonstrate your spirit of transparency, cooperation, and openness by taking this important step in improving my request. At its core, a municipal inspection is nothing more than an independent performance evaluation with extensive public participation, providing multiple benefits, no different than what many businesses often undertake to improve their efficiencies and services delivered. The results of a municipal inspection could show residents have valid concerns which council can evaluate, and it could also vindicate and praise council or both. Instead of interpreting a municipal inspection as an unwelcome investigation, which is not meant to be, I suggest council should embrace it, look at the many benefits, and in doing so, gain the trust of town residents, showing you are putting community first. By approving a municipal inspection, you would go a long way to restoring public confidence in Coaldale's Town Council. I ask that you approve this request to help us move forward and work together for a better Coaldale. And I wanted to leave you with one last thought. The cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of action. Thank you.
I'll open the floor if any members of council have any questions of the presenter. Councillor Simpson.
Your worship. Mr. Van Ryan, I've reviewed your social media account, your group's social media account, and I noticed there's less than 600 people that are part of it on social media. So is there a membership file outside of it? And what is the number? And also I noticed that you guys share a lot of your posts to Lethbridge groups. So are you actually getting it from all the Coaldale residents, or are you actually getting information from Lethbridge residents too?
In answer to Councillor Simpson's question, I am not aware of us sharing to any Lethbridge groups. As far as the membership goes, we have online profile through Facebook. We have a website, and then we have a log of individuals that are not on social media that have emailed us directly that want to volunteer if and when the time comes to continue with this municipal inspection.
So right now you're under 10% of the membership. So what is your membership? What is the number of them? So we know how many residents you're talking about. Because when you say many, it could be 2, 5, 10, or it could be 1,000. We don't know.
It's in the hundreds.
Worship, through to Mr. Van Ryan. Thanks for coming and presenting today. You brought up some very good concerns. Not all of them I agree with you on, but that's fine. That's why we're here. One of the questions that keeps coming back, and I did go through the municipal government too and checked on a few things, and from what I understand, it's any of these reviews take upwards of 2 to 3 years. How do we fast track something like that, even if we decided we wanted to? We have an election coming up in less than a year, well, basically a year from now. And so I'm just wondering, all the information that's going to be coming out of this is probably going to be of no value to anybody after that anyways. Is there something else that we as council that you would recommend us do if we didn't go forward with something like this? Is it additional training for staff? Because looking at a lot of the reports on the municipal government website, that seems to be the conclusion most of the time. It's additional training required, because in most cases a review is put forward mostly because council itself is not reacting properly, or the worst one that kept coming up when I was reviewing it was usually it was a breakdown of governance and administration due to, and I quote, hostile environment by public shadow groups and the effort to create a demand from and cater to demand of those interest groups. So I'm just worried that if we go forward with this, and I'm not opposed to having a review. I don't think we have anything to necessarily, I'm not going to say hide. I don't have any problems with it, but the timing of it sucks. And I guess the main question I would have is, what exactly would be the wording on the document that we would send forward?
In answer to Councillor Holmes' questions, there's quite a few questions in your statement. The first one I'll answer is I spoke with Municipal Affairs again this morning, and if the municipal inspection was put forth by the town of Coaldale themselves, they would do a preliminary investigation within the first 6 months to see if it warrants further examination. As far as hostile comments, I think everybody around the council table knows who I am and my love for my community, and the fact that I want to have open, honest dialogue with members of council. We don't want to have to be concerned about the dealings that the town is doing behind the citizens' backs, and that we find out after the fact. This exercise is needed, it's warranted, and I think it would be in good faith by council to self-initiate the municipal inspection.
Lloyd?
Thank you, Your Worship. My question is regarding the new school. We're really proud of what we have come up with for a school plan and for if we can get the school, and also the rec center. And there's of course the citizens group that is very much opposed to this. How will this municipal inspection affect our chances or of being selected to have the funding for a school?
In answer to Councillor Lloyd's question, I spoke with Municipal Affairs last week, and we've been having weekly conversations leading up to tonight's presentation. And whatever is happening with the school and where it is in the budget cycle, a municipal inspection might hit the pause button on that until they find out what's going on when they go back layer by layer. And again, if you self-initiate, the conversation I had this morning was that they would do a preliminary within the first 6 months.
Councillor Avery?
Thank you, Worship. Thanks, Jack, for coming out tonight. I really appreciate it. Is there any way that your group has confirmed the IP addresses from the comments that you provided us on your survey? So there isn't multiple coming from the same phone or computer?
In answer to your question, Councillor Avery, I have, let me just get that open here for you here. We did the survey for 12 days from July 17th to July 28th, and we had 739 responses, but 3 of them were from the same IP address. So we did our results based on 736 responses.
And kind of a two-part question, and I think you answered it with Councillor Holmes' question. So what's the group looking for out of the survey? And the costing of it is $50,000 to $150,000, depending on the depth of it. So I don't think the town has anything to worry about with the survey or with an audit. And my recommendation, if we're going to do it, let's go back 7 years and do a full audit rather than a 3-year.
If there was a question in there someplace, I missed it.
What is the group looking for? Like, is it open, honest transparency, or is it political motivation?
This exercise is to do with more than just members of council. It is to do with the organization and how it is being run. We have the feeling, and it's repeated over and over again, and witnessed by myself when I come to council meetings. Good example is when you pass the capital budget on January 27th or 24th. It's a $53 million budget. There's no discussion. The administration team does an excellent job on the presentation, and then when it comes time to talking about it, no one asks a question. The motion is made to pass it, and it's passed with zero discussion. I invite you to go back and play the video from 2018, because that capital budget is available via YouTube. Unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, the one in January is not available. That comes to another point I want to bring up, is that the way that the town of Coaldale is keeping the minutes of council meetings needs to revert back to the way it was pre-July of 2018. Up until July of 2018, before your summer break, you kept extensive minutes. And a good example, and I invite you, and hopefully you did your homework on your package tonight, is that coming up tonight will be the VLT follow-up, where administration was tasked to get all the past information on any discussions to do with the VLT question. And if you go through your package, the minutes are excellent. You can read through that, and you don't even have to be at the meeting, and you know exactly what happened. The way that your council meetings are being recorded now, there are no minutes. Let me rephrase that. The minutes only include the motions. There's no discussion points. In 2017, the Municipal Government Act made a change where members of council were not allowed, or administration were not allowed to document discussion points. That changed back in 2018. And I had several discussions with Municipal Affairs about that as well. And they said most councils don't even know that that happened. And people can now go back to the way it was, where you can record. Lana was nice enough to do a bit of a survey with other municipalities, and there was 2 other ones that were recording the minutes. And I think Coaldale has an opportunity to set an example for other municipalities on taking a good set of minutes.
Well, thank you very much for that. Lana, do you have a comment about the minutes?
Thank you, Mayor, I do. I also consulted with Municipal Affairs on the matter, and they did share that it is, the clause that used to be in the MGA stated that it was minutes were taken without comment or note. And so prior to last summer, that we had actually been recording them incorrectly. And so we started to do that by just recording the agenda item and the resulting resolution. When I consulted with Municipal Affairs on it, they also stated that it was a good practice to not include the dialogue or comment, as it can be taken out of context after the fact. And this is a statement that I agree with. And in response to Mr. Van Ryan's comment that there are 2 municipalities that do record the dialogue and discussion, but there are also 14 others that I also consulted that do not. If this is something that council would like to bring back in, then we would need a resolution to do so.
I recall a session with the council when we had a workshop on best practices, and the guidance given at that workshop was foundational to what you already said. So thank you very much. Mr. Van Ryan, most of what you have provided tonight is opinionated, in my opinion, and to launch a municipal review, I believe that there should be some substantive reason for that, in the word of poor, improper governance, or some impropriety, some foundational aspect that we would take to municipal affairs for that. Otherwise, there's other remedies that council could look at to engage, such as what you were saying about best review of business practices, etc. So I just want to ask you before you leave, do you have any single allegation that warrants a municipal review at this time?
The presentation that I spoke of tonight, and also the letter I sent in, touches on some of the concerns that we have, and those are concerns I will share with Municipal Affairs when and if the inspection does happen. And for the public record, the other option, if town council does not want to self-initiate, we have an opportunity to do a petition that requires 20% of the population, and we are prepared to move forward with that. So that's the other option. I just wanted an opportunity to comment on Lana's comments about minute taking, is that Again, I implore that you go through the minutes tonight from the VLT discussions, and that is a prime example of why you need to revert back to the way you used to, so that when you have technical difficulties with a recording and you want to go back and see what was discussed at the January 2020 capital budget discussion points, there's none, absolutely nothing. There's no video to go to, so that's a prime example of why you should. Also, you delete the videos after 4 years, whereas if they're printed, they're there forever. And that's part of the Coaldale's history, and I think it would be good for Coaldale and to showcase Coaldale by going back to that.
Your opinion about the minutes, and we'll take that under advisement. And unless there's any other questions of members of council, I'll thank you for the time that you spent with us, and in compliance with public health guidelines, we're keeping the room maximum to 15, so I'll invite you to join the live stream after if you wish, and thank you very much for your time.
Very much.
Very well then, now we're at 4.1, reintroduction of VLTs, and I'll give the mic over to Kaylin Hastings.
Mr. Mayor, the VLT follow-up agenda item report was drafted in response to Council Resolution 259.20 from the regular council meeting of July 13th, 2020. And this resolution directed administration to bring back information and meeting minutes regarding the VLT topic in order to assist council as it evaluates its options on how to move forward. I don't have any new information that council hasn't already seen at this time. What we included here, thanks to Lana's assistance, was the council meeting minutes, letters from the applicant, Mr. Schmidt, as well as letters of support from the Coaldale Chamber. I think the package is fairly self-explanatory in terms of identifying the chronology and the timeline. This is a matter that council has spent quite a bit of time on, both last council term as well as this council term. And so in distilling down the information that's present in the package, there's 4 options for council to consider on how to move forward. Option 1 would be that council receive the report for information and decline the request to reinstate video lottery terminals in Coaldale. Option 2 is that council move to direct administration to bring back a bylaw that, if approved, would have the effect of reinstating the operation and use of video lottery terminals in Coaldale. Further, that such a bylaw appear at the regular council meeting, that should say October 13th, 2020. For consideration of first reading, followed by a public hearing. I should note that it's not statutorily required to have a public hearing, but given the history of this matter, that may be a good prudent measure should council wish to use discretion and have a public hearing, to be held over electronic means at the regular council meeting, and that should now say October 27th, prior to giving consideration to second reading. Third option is that council move to refer the question of whether to reinstate the operation of video lottery terminals in Coaldale to a public vote pursuant to section 236(1) of the Municipal Government Act. That's the plebiscite option. The reason this option was identified because there was a plebiscite on the last election ballot with respect to this matter. So if the decision to not reinstate them was determined by way of plebiscite, you may wish to use the same instrument to have that reconsidered. And then I have what's called an option 3A here, where if council so chooses, you could refer the matter to reinstate the operation of video lottery terminals to a public vote pursuant to section 236 of the Municipal Government Act on the condition that the owner of the Coaldale Inn, Mr. Schmidt, the applicant, reimburse the town for the cost to hold the plebiscite on the reintroduction of VLTs up to a maximum of, I inserted 5,000, given that this would be a single question. We wouldn't need to rent the technology tabulators like we would do for a full-blown municipal election. So $5,000 would be kind of the rough upset maximum, as I don't think it would be significantly more money to hold a plebiscite on a matter like this. So this is a topic that's been discussed at length before, and we've narrowed in on those 4 options. I didn't put option 5, which is direct administration to return back with more information, simply because there isn't any more information that we can provide. This is back in the hands of council in terms of how to proceed on this matter, and so with that, I'll conclude my overview of the information package in item 4.1 for questions or discussion.
See Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Again, speaking against VLTs, we spend a lot of time, as the CAO mentioned, on VLTs, and keep talking about it and keep talking about it. We keep getting asked for public input. The public have spoken twice on VLTs. Why are we continuing to entertain VLTs every couple months at our council meeting? The public have said by public plebiscite, exactly, municipal audits, plebiscites for Civic Square. So we have gone through that path already twice for VLTs. Why do we keep entertaining and bringing it back to the table? Our residents have spoken, and they have said no to VLTs. So I speak in favor of option 1, that we should be done with it. We should be able to have a council term without entertaining VLTs.
Councillor Avery as option 1. Any discussion to that motion? Councillor Simpson?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I have a question with the survey that was done. I noticed none of the demographics are on it, so do we get a fair of the demographics of age groups from 18 above on the survey, or is there some more information about that we can see that every age group was kind of had the same say in it? Or at least as per like our population, like, whatever the 30s to 40s are the higher ones, so like if it's similar to that.
Keelan?
Through the chair to Councillor Simpson, you're referring to the public opinion survey that was conducted by the professional polling firm on and around 2016-17. When we hired the firm, they had a series of independent variables that they used. What's your age? What's your gender? Without looking at it specifically, they may have had a few more. And they use that as a way to measure the reliability of the results to see if the demographics of the respondents matched the demographics of Coaldale as a community. They also used a systemized random telephone methodology that was accurate, plus or minus 3.5% 19 times out of 20, because it's a system that digitally calls people with a phone number or cell number assigned to Coaldale. So there was a randomness component to the people that would have responded, and then they spot checked the accuracy of that with the independent variable questions to see if that was consistent with the demographics of Coaldale. Anytime that there's a professional survey that's conducted, they promise anonymity. So in compliance with the legislation for people providing information, they actually destroy the information after they tabulate the results. They don't keep a log of which numbers, because that would be in breach of the ethics that all pollsters use. So it wouldn't be possible for us at this stage, or even at the stage that they provided us the final report, to determine who the phone numbers were and who spoke. That's just how professional polling firms operate, and that would be the case across the board anytime that such research is undertaken.
Councillor Holm?
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking against the motion that's on the table, I didn't realize that the motion was already brought forward. That's okay. I guess my problem with this whole thing is I don't know why we continue as a council and as a town per se, why we continue to want to put our businesses at a disadvantage compared to all the surrounding areas around us that they compete against. Since VLTs were taken out in, I believe, 1998, Coaldale Motor Inn has gone under 2 or 3 times. The Ventura Motel is no longer open. We only have one place left that actually had them. I believe McLennan's had VLTs. I'm not exactly sure. But we basically have said to our businesses that if you're into having hotels, restaurants, lounges, we don't want you in our town because you can't compete on a level playing field with the city of Lethbridge, the town of Tabor, the town of Picture Butte. I can't say town of Raymond because Raymond doesn't have any of those establishments. But all the other communities that surround our businesses that we want to attract to this town cannot compete on a level playing field. We can state that while morally we don't want to have VLTs in town, well, 6.5 minutes to the west, we have a major casino. So if there's anybody in town who is going to be addicted to VLTs, et cetera, and that's our moral issue, is we don't want to hurt our citizens, they can drive 6.5 minutes west. That's less distance than probably any place in Calgary would have to drive to go to a casino or any other facility that had VLTs. So I'm really worried that if we're open for business and we want to protect our businesses that we have, why would we not allow something that's legal in the province of Alberta to have in an establishment? As I understand from previous information brought forward, there were, I believe, 6 communities in the province of Alberta that turned them down back in 1998. Of those, I think there's 3 or 4 have reinstated them. I believe there's only 2 or 3 left in the province of Alberta that continue to have this moral value that 6.5 minutes west will change your life. So I'm open for business in Coaldale. And if this little change allows a business to maintain in Coaldale or new businesses to come in Coaldale, then I'm all for it.
I support what you say in the sense of being supportive of business and whatnot, but I also really strongly reinforce the fact of what Jason Avery said about the plebiscites. You know, we're at a moral dilemma about people pushing us for petitions and plebiscites and whatnot, and public engagement and listening to people, and then we go and have 2 plebiscites, and you know, regardless of individual members of council's public, you know, personal opinion on the morality and the common sense and business ethics and whatnot of having, you know, VLTs in Coaldale, it's just almost an insurmountable question about ignoring the plebiscite. So I personally don't, I would not feel any validation on overturning the results of a plebiscite. So Councillor Chapman and Councillor Simpson and Councillor Holm.
Thank you, Your Worship. Speaking in favor of the motion, really the whole emphasis that we've practiced the last over 20 years, and the people have spoken twice to a plebiscite, and the only way that I would even support a next step would be in a plebiscite manner if that were the case. So at this point in time, I believe that the requester has spoken to me about his moves going forward, and doesn't feel that he wants to pursue this matter any further. And so with that, this matter, to me, is simply the one that supports the option number one that Councillor Avery presents.
Just through the chair to council, I just wanted to point out that we have not received an official letter from the applicant stating their position, so at this time that wouldn't be something that we could officially rely on in terms of their position. So although that may be something that you had heard, I just wanted to point out that we don't have any official record in writing. So the last communication that we've received from Mr. Schmidt is a letter requesting their reinstatement in Coaldale. So I just wanted to point that out in terms of like what we actually have in writing.
Yeah, fair enough. Thank you for clarifying that. And however, the case would be that the reinstatement, in my view, would have to follow the same pattern that it has in previous times. So with that, I would still support option number one.
I can understand both sides of the situation. I can hear both sides of the situation. The biggest thing with the town of Coaldale, if we want to get a pool or if we want to get all these things, we need to bring business into Coaldale. That's our biggest thing, is to be able to afford something like a pool or something bigger than that. We need to bring business into Coaldale. And I know of at least 2 businesses that would not come to Coaldale because of the VLT issue. Those businesses may or may have not even put VLTs into their location. So my issue is, I know what the town wants. They do want this pool. We can't afford the upkeep, the maintenance with 11% commercial, 89% residential. We need to bring business in. And I do feel by limiting the VLTs, we are limiting businesses that'll come into Coaldale. And so that is something we need to consider if we want to bring in other amenities into this community.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do understand that we have had 2 plebiscite votes on this. We also have to remember that a plebiscite vote was not required to reinstate VLTs. We made a motion the last time we had a plebiscite request for a plebiscite vote, and I think Tracy kind of scolded us at our first retreat as a council after the last election, basically saying, you never ever make a motion at a public meeting because you're caught up in the turmoil and the different things going on at that. Somebody made the motion at that meeting to go to plebiscite based on feelings, not based on council discussion. There is no requirements within legislation to have another plebiscite vote to reinstate VLTs. We can stand up and do that all by ourselves. We don't have to have a plebiscite vote to do this.
Councillor Simpson?
Another thing too is when I do talk to citizens around, I do ask the VLT question, and my number one response is, actually I don't mind them in here at all. A lot of people just don't care, to be honest, and then there is the few that don't want VLTs in the community. So, by having open dialogue with people in the community, I've seen a higher side of them accepting VLTs within our community.
Okay. Any other discussion? All right, we have the motion for option number 1 put forward by Councillor Avery, that council received this report for information and declined the request to reinstate video lottery terminals in Coaldale. So, barring any further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's 4 in favor. And opposed? 3 opposed. The motion carries.
Yep. Could I just make one motion if we could follow up with Ken Schmidt and see if that was actually his desires not to have VLTs any longer?
Well, you can make a motion. So we have a motion by Councillor Simpson to follow up with the owner of Coaldale Inn on his desire for the reinstatement of VLTs. Councillor Avery?
Your Worship, I'm just wondering what's the purpose of the motion at this point that we voted not to reinstate VLTs within Coaldale. So we've tabled it, we voted in option one, so getting in contact with the motor inn now is, I think, maybe insulting to the business owner. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, I just don't want to insult Mr. Schmidt.
Avery, I have no problem taking the motion off, but I would like to have some communication with him afterwards regarding that.
Okay, so we have a motion by Councillor Simpson. Oh, do you take it off?
Like I said, I have no issue with everybody. I'm okay taking it off. I
Oh,
just
okay.
want some communication
Okay.
back with him.
All right. Just wanted to clarify. Okay, so there's no motion, thank you. And so we move on to 4.2, and we have Spencer here.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening to yourself and council. The item before you this evening is a continuation of a discussion that started last year. In the fall of 2019, the formation of an accessibility working group with the goal of having a group of citizens and staff meet and discuss how public spaces and potentially if the group was to evolve to a point where advice for private spaces such as businesses and organizations, how these spaces could be made more accessible. And by accessible, I mean accessible by people that have a variety of disabilities. So this request was brought to council in the fall of 2019. An accessibility working group call for nominations was put forward after that, and due to a general lack of interest or individuals being nominated for that type of group, it was abandoned in January of 2020. Since that time, and as a part of some other improvements that have been made around the community, specifically a couple of meetings with an individual with a lived experience with a disability and the rapid rectangular flashing beacons that have recently been installed, that discussion has come back to the forefront at the staff level at least. So the individual that staff has met with focused on the rectangular rapid flashing beacons and how those could be made more accessible, has further asked if there would be interest in council considering a opening up again of the nomination process to start an accessibility working group. And the individual in discussion with them has indicated they have other people that may be interested in sitting on a group such as that. So the recommendation from staff before council this evening is to allow for the nomination process for an accessibility working group to be reopened to see if there is more interest from the community. And ultimately what that would do is help to inform accessibility design with some of our public facilities that we're working on at the moment. One example would be with Main Street. We did make use of one individual from Lethbridge who had quite a bit of experience as a local architect with accessible design and streetscapes. So that certainly improved the accessibility of Main Street, and that type of thing could be carried forward in terms of best practice for our future facilities with a citizen-based group.
Is there any questions for the Spencer? Councillor Simpson?
I actually think this is a great idea, and I'm glad somebody has stepped forward for that. So with that, I would make the motion to approve the request to reopen the nomination process for accessibility working group.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Simpson for recommendation number 1. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer. So our next item of business is item 7.2, and that is the continuation of the Citizen for Better Coaldale request for municipal, or Jack Van Ryan representing that group for a municipal inspection. And so the discussion we have before council is to weigh in on the matter. I'm going to turn the floor over to our CEO to provide a bit of of an overview of the municipal inspection process itself. But before I do that, I just wanted to comment on one thing that there was a comment that in the presentation that there was an idea of discussion and being able to have dialogue with council. And in the 3 years since election, I don't recall ever having a phone call from Mr. Van Ryan to meet or discuss any of the items that appeared on any of the council agendas or anything. And I think I'm very proud of our council. There are members of council that go out and engage at different locations in Coaldale, and I know that almost all of the members of council respond to emails that they get or phone calls that they get. Councillor Holm always raises items that he is approached on by community members and whatnot, and I believe that any member of council is totally accessible by phone. And I think one of the councillors was saying that there was a dialogue on the social media, which I don't follow, and it was a clear example of how to have a dialogue is, you pick up the phone and say, hello, councillor, this or that, and I'd like to ask you about this or that. So anyway, without further ado, I just want to turn it over to Kaylin that can give us some more background on the process. Maybe we can do 7.2 and then we'll go back to 7.1.
Sure.
They're both very important.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to start by saying that we missed 7.1, but only for a short time. So if you want, I can wait for 7.1 to conclude, or I can do 7.2 now. I just wanted to make a point that we haven't done 7.1 yet.
Okay. Well, all the respect for our CFO, Kyle, that's there at the mic, I guess, with council's indulgence, we'll go back to 7.1.
Good afternoon, everyone. So as previously approved, council approved the volunteer firefighter tax credit. Tax credit for volunteers, individuals, and businesses who meet the associated hour requirement. This matter was approved on the January 13th, 2020 council meeting. Under the MGA section 347(1), council, if they consider, council does have the opportunity to cancel or reduce property taxes, and this volunteer firefighter tax credit would be in line with council canceling or reducing the associated property taxes amount. So with that being said, the total cost of the volunteer firefighter tax credit for 2020 was $22,600. $17,000 of that went to individual firefighters, and $5,600 went to businesses. With those individuals and businesses meeting the associated requirements, council must formally make the motion to write off excuse me, the portion of the property taxes for those roll numbers. So the recommendation is that council write off current property taxes for the year 2020 for the following tax roll numbers and the associated amounts noted below. And we'll turn that back to council for any questions.
We'll do our CFO by council. Councillor Chapman.
Worship, and thank you through to Kyle for all your hard work on this, and to our fire department for all their hard work. And I see that you're following due diligence under the Municipal Government Act, so I'd be happy to make the motion for you on the item and to, as I see it here.
You're gonna move the recommendation?
Absolutely, yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, I see none. Kyle, do you have anything or no? Okay. Seeing no more discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? And that's carried unanimously. And I apologize for my anxiety on, moving ahead with our agenda items here, so. We'll return back to 7.2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In order to assist council in considering the request by Mr. Van Ryan of the Citizens for a Better Coaldale Group, I'll briefly summarize what a municipal inspection is and how it works. I too reached out and spoke with Municipal Affairs. I went through the municipal inspection reports that are published on their website, reviewed the applicable case law on how inspections work and the predominant purpose and function for why they exist as a way to guide the speaking notes that I've provided for you this evening. So in this overview, I'll look at the inspection process and its parameters, the estimated turnaround time for an inspection, including the steps required to get from A to Z, and the general cost of these inspections to the municipality. Before I get into that, I'll start with a review of the roles and responsibilities of a council as outlined in the Municipal Government Act. What is the purpose of a councillor? Part 1 of the Municipal Government Act deals with the purposes, powers, and capacity of municipalities. Section 3 states that the purposes of a municipality are to provide good government, foster the well-being of the environment, provide services, facilities, or other things that, in the opinion of council, are necessary or desirable for all or part of the municipality, develop and maintain safe and viable communities, and work collaboratively with neighboring municipalities to plan, deliver, and fund intermunicipal services. The MGA also gives broad bylaw passing authority to councils to govern municipalities in whatever way the councils consider appropriate within the jurisdiction given them and provided it's within the law. In discharging these powers, council need to make tough decisions about which initiatives to advance, at what pace, and in what manner. The purpose of an inspection is not to second-guess the valid exercise of these powers by a duly elected council. On the contrary, the inspection process is authorized under Section 571 of the Municipal Government Act, where the minister may, in their discretion, upon review of the applicable materials, require any matter connected with the management, administration, or operation of any municipality or any assessment prepared under Part 9 to be inspected. Section 571(1) enumerates 3 scenarios to initiate a municipal inspection. The first is on the minister's initiative. The second is a request of council, or the third is a petition from electors of the municipality constituting at least 20% of the population. The parameters established by the MGA are quite broad, but they are also indicative of the matters to be considered. The words management, administration, or operation clearly indicate the day-to-day activities of a municipality's governing bodies and management. The inspection mandate, that is the core purpose of the process, requires the inspection to determine whether a municipality is being governed or managed in an irregular, improper, or improvident manner. Definitionally speaking, irregular can be defined as, quote, not according to established principles, procedures, or law, not normal, not following the usual rules about what should be done. Improper can be defined as deviating from fact, truth, or established usage. Unsuitable, not appropriate, not conforming to accepted standards of conduct. And improvident can be defined as lacking foresight, taking no thought of future needs, spendthrift, not providing for or saving for the future, not wise or sensible regarding money. Examples of issues leading to a municipal inspection include fiscal improprieties, a dysfunctional council or administration that is unable to make decisions, a toxic workplace or perpetual infighting amongst management, unacceptable employment and workplace practices, improperly awarded municipal contracts, in compliance with provincial legislation, and the like. Secondary to the determination of the presence of any irregularities, improprieties, or improvidence, municipal inspectors have historically also identified areas for improvement in their report. but I should note that this is not the primary point or function of the municipal inspection process. In terms of content, inspection reports that are given the broad mandate under the MGA tend to focus on specific areas including governance, looking at how a council functions, whether it's dysfunctional and unable to make decisions, is it following their code of conduct? Administration, the role of the CAO's performance evaluations, the CAO's effectiveness carrying out major administrative duties, for example. Operations, reviews of planning and development, functioning of public works, productive services. Finance, budgetary processes, tax and property assessments, procurement practices, overall financial position, major capital projects. In viewing the relevant case law and the content provided in the municipal inspection reports of other municipalities, it is clear that municipal inspections do not exist to second-guess a council's strategic plan or capital plans, nor its vision or mandate for a community. Those are political elements. The most recent inspection reports can be located on the Alberta government website, and as we've heard already from Councillor Holm, he's already taken the liberty to do his homework and flip through those. The last inspection reports, I should also note, were published in 2018. Next, I'll talk about the the inspection timeline and process. The timeline for a municipal review process varies, depending on the discretion of the minister and how much vetting they wish to do before deciding to undertake one or not. But typically, once a consultant is hired, it's about a year, depending on scope. Also, it would be unusual from an administrative fairness perspective to have the results of such an inspection released on the eve or a few months before an election. Should an inspection go forward, it would almost surely be published next council term. The following are the main stages of the inspection process. First, there's the application or request. Unless requested by the town council directly, the request would need to obtain the support of 20% of the electors of Coaldale. This prevents individuals from using this as a political weapon. The petitioners have 60 days from the date upon which the first signature is signed. Otherwise, you can't take more than 60 days of a sampling. Notification to the Minister of Municipal Affairs of this request and the petition is then made, and the sufficiency of the petition is reviewed by an official appointed by the province. If the petition is sufficient, the Ministry of Municipal Affairs will then assess the merits of the request, and to this end, they will do a preliminary interview with the citizens who are requesting the inspection, the town council, and the members of the administration, and they will determine if or to what extent an inspection is warranted or whether a different recourse tool is more appropriate. Following these interviews and due diligence, department staff will then either recommend or not recommend to the minister that an inspection take place. In other words, inspections are not automatically granted even if the requisite signatures are obtained. The process, if an inspection is granted, is as follows. If an inspection is to take place, an RFP will go out to obtain consultants to undertake the interview. Once the inspector is appointed, it will take several months for them to gather the data, interview key individuals in the town and community to understand the processes and systems in place, and to submit a final report to the minister. Once the minister has the final report, it will be reviewed, and the minister may then issue directives to the municipality if concerns are raised. The municipality has an opportunity to respond to the report and the directives as well. The final report is presented to council at a public meeting and posted on the Municipal Affairs website for anyone to review. The next portion is cost. The cost of the inspection is generally borne by the municipality, subject to the municipality's ability to finance the expense. These costs vary depending on the scope of the approved inspection, but in my discussion with Municipal Affairs, the average cost, from what I was told, was between $50,000 to $70,000 or more, up to $150,000, depending on the scope of review that's required, not to mention the significant levels of council and staff time. I have a few concluding points for council to consider. To date, council, to my knowledge, has not received any data to support the claim that the municipality is being managed in an irregular, improper, or improvident manner. If such data was provided, there is nothing to prevent council from dealing with an issue directly by engaging an expert or consultant to review, report, and recommend solutions in a more timely fashion. In fact, if there was information that was brought forward, you could deal with it tomorrow. You don't have to necessarily wait for the time for an inspection process to deal with a matter that comes before your attention. If there is no data to support the claim of irregular, improper, or improvident management or governance or operations, the question emerges, is the municipal inspection tool the right option should council wish to conduct a, quote, performance evaluation? If this is the desire of council, do better alternatives exist to achieve this desire? As council will recall, we have already conducted a review of our internal processes using the assistance of a contract consultant. We have been actively implementing the opportunities for improvement that were identified. Continuous improvement isn't something that we have shied away from, not to mention the annual strategic planning sessions, council orientation, and governance workshops that we've had consultants come in to perform. With respect to performance management, if council wants to take it a step further, you could put out an RFP to retain a consultant to conduct, for example, a service level review and/or an efficiency and effectiveness study to evaluate the town's operations through a business lens. The City of Lethbridge went through something similar recently. Studies like these typically provide recommendations for cost-saving measures, propose changes to the delivery of services, along with the analytics and steps to achieve same. If council truly wants to place a greater emphasis on evaluating corporate performance, this is the route to do it. A municipal inspector will not, for example, analyze the operation of the town's pool and arena, nor propose efficiency measures that will reduce the town's operating costs by, say, 10% and increase your revenues by, say, 20%. That is a different type of consulting exercise. Given the cost and time implications, in the absence of any supporting data in this request that the organization, managerial operations, or governance is being ran in an irregular, improper, or improvident manner, we recommend that council table any decision with respect to this matter until such data is provided. And that concludes my comments with respect to the overview of the municipal inspection process. I'll turn it back to council.
I'll just open dialogue with a bit of a comment. Number one, I want to start off with the fact that in 2017, something happened in Coaldale. We had an election. And I know that I went to many doorsteps and asked for people's mandate to become mayor. And I believe that many of the councillors present did the same, to go out and meet people at the election. And I think that feedback is invaluable public engagement. And it's a time-consuming exercise, and it requires a lot of work and commitment. Having a love for Coaldale is shown every time this group meets, because we love Coaldale, and we sit here and we are the victims of nasty social media commentary, and we still keep coming and showing up for work. So there's no question about our love and passion for Coaldale, and I am so proud of council because you do not always agree. Tonight is a perfect example. You know, other councillors are, hearkening back to what was said on the doorstep and their personal beliefs about different issues, and they speak to those issues when necessary. A lot of the time when this council is making decisions or hearing reports, a lot of information is already corporate knowledge within each and every one of our minds, and we don't necessarily have to ask a stupid question to placate the viewing public that we're awake. So, I want to thank everybody for their commitment to the town of Coaldale, because we are citizens for a better Coaldale, notwithstanding that there's a loud majority that might think otherwise. The letter provided to council this evening lacks detail, as I pointed out, mostly opinionated as far as I could see. It goes on to refer to some controversial issues of great importance involving significant taxpayer investments. This would appear to refer to investments in the new school and recreation center on the north side, as well as the new civic center downtown. However, the precise issues with these projects have not been listed or articulated. As the letter does not state the specific concerns, it is rather vague as to those areas where it feels council, the CAO, administration, and management have failed to address concerns. It is not clear from the letter whether the concerns lie primarily with council governance, administration, operations, or finances. For example, does the citizens group feel that council has failed to follow proper governance procedures? Does the citizens group feel that council has failed to work cooperatively? Similarly, do citizens take the view that administration is the problem? The letter does not refer directly to issues with the CAO or other administration officials. Again, there is no clear concern raised with how the CAO interacts with council. If administration is dysfunctional, or if it is failing to act in accordance with the MGA, the Municipal Government Act. Further, there is no reference to issues with operations. Is the implication that we are making decisions without due diligence or appropriate oversight? Finally, while there is concern raised about significant taxpayer investments, it is not clear what aspect of the decisions on these investments are problematic from a tax or budgetary perspective. Municipal councils are regularly charged with making decisions that will have large long-term consequences financially. The letter does not express the precise concerns with the decisions regarding taxpayer investments. What about the projects we have approved are problematic? Is there flaws in governance? Overall, the difficulty with the letter, presentation, and request is that it fails to make a clear case as to why council should agree to the request by the citizens group to seek an inspection through the Minister of Municipal Affairs. While the group can certainly initiate its own petition and move ahead in an effort to seek signatures from electors, constituting 20% of the population, Coaldale should, as a matter of course, be given specific concerns that relate generally to the 4 areas typically reviewed in an inspection. If citizens were able to identify clear and concise issues that highlight failings with the management of the town, council would be able to more adequately assess the request. At this time, the letter is vague and as to what those concerns are. Given the previous political role played by Mr. Van Ryan, identifying concrete concerns would help alleviate the uncertainty as to whether or not this is a politically driven effort. Resolving this uncertainty is especially important for the integrity of this request. It is, as it now stands, based on the information provided and the comments from my council colleagues, I don't know what Mr. Van Ryan's request on behalf of the Citizens for a Better Coaldale group, if it passes the smell test. It smells like a political end run of this newly elected council, the latest tactic from a group of citizens that didn't get their way. If the community is deeply unsatisfied with this council's body of work, the recourse is the electoral process, which is just a year away. We shouldn't resort to an administrative process to facilitate a political vendetta or somebody's campaign launch. That is using an arm of the province for the wrong reasons. And with regard to the action of the offering of going to and pounding the streets for a petition for a municipal review, I would reach out to the citizens and ask them to really thoughtfully decide if that is the path they wish to take. This community has a toxic environment with regard to different items, and that will not help matters. And for our council and the previous council to work so hard with Palliser School District to get a new high school on the drawing board in a priority fashion, I think it would be unconscionable to shake the confidence in that project by going about a petition. I, for one, and I believe my colleagues here, have no fear about a municipal review. We have nothing to hide, and I think that the greater question is, what damage would that do? I was at a meeting just on Friday, and some of my municipal peers around the area are having a great deal of frivolity at the expense of Coaldale. That the turmoil and the social media backlash is causing them great humor at the expense of the town, and I just wonder what damage is happening. I'll take my full credit that some things maybe I haven't done correct, but you know what? I'm only one vote on council, and every vote I make is for the best interest of Coaldale, and I will not lose sleep on any of the votes I have made to make Coaldale a better place. And I want to now, after that long speech, turn the floor over to my members of council if they have anything to say. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Your Worship, and members of council. These are my thoughts regarding this matter at hand, and I put a lot of thought into this matter. And it, a part of me really would like to go ahead and let's get an inspection. I mean, I really have no reason to fear. I mean, we could get something out of this. There might be some things we could learn. But inspections aren't just performance evaluations. In fact, my understanding is that inspections are granted by the Ministry of Municipal Affairs when there's evidence of serious infractions committed by the municipality. So far, I haven't heard or encountered any data or specifics on how our council and our administration is acting contrary to the Municipal Government Act. I have seen no specifics about how we have been managing the municipality in an irregular, improvident, or improper way. In the absence of being provided more specific information about where we are offside, I am left to conclude from the information provided that this is really kind of like a pre-election campaign, a tactic, an attempt to redo the results of the election by an unsuccessful candidate. Unfortunately, the group that refers to themselves, and I would refer to them as special interest group, as the Citizens for a Better Coaldale, appears to be the request, I'd say even a threat, of a municipal inspection as their latest end run for political gain. They are using it as a tool to undermine or frustrate the vision and agenda of a duly elected council. Now, I'm really all in favor of performance improvement. I'd even consider hiring an external consultant to conduct a service level review that included a heavy citizen engagement component. But I'm not real in favor of being rushed or bullied into making a snap decision on a request for municipal inspection where far better alternatives for seeking organizational improvement exist. And I might just add to this that, our council routinely and regularly has strategic planning sessions where annually we review ourselves and see what our strategy is for the next following year, where there could be improvement either on conduct, on other matters that are important to the community. We've used external sources such as who Councillor Holm pointed out. We've used other consulting and best practices being utilized in all our departments. As a matter of fact, best practices through finance, through our operations, through administration, through emergency services, and even earlier, best practices in doing minutes. And all our staff are taking courses on best practices. It's not that they're just out on a trip somewhere, but they come back with real directives. And for that, we're really, really grateful. So inspections are not just a recourse tool for decisions properly made. So I'll conclude my remarks by saying that unless I hear of more specific data that a municipal inspection is warranted, I'm not comfortable as a councillor agreeing to a year-plus process, or 6 months as he's talking about, and potentially $100,000 to unnecessarily stall the time we have left this council term to fulfill the rest of our mandate. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Simpson?
I also have a few comments. So I also question the motives of this request and have concerns that it is politically driven. All of the concerns I've heard so far are political in nature regarding decisions made by this council. A municipal inspection looks at the operation, administration, and management of our municipality. It seems like the wrong method of recourse for a group whose primary interest has been to criticize our vision as a council, a vision that we collectively made in the best interest of our community. We were elected to make decisions in the best interest of our residents. That's why we are here, to make decisions. Being upset about a project choice or its location is not an operational, administration, or management issue. These are political issues. And political issues aren't addressed in municipal inspections. Political issues are addressed in elections, which is our ultimate evaluation, which just so happens to be a year away. The timing of this request is very curious. In summary, nobody uses the tool of a municipal inspections as a routine evaluation process. That is not why it exists. Inspections are a serious process reserved for serious issues. Because of this, I'll need to see some serious evidence and details about why one is needed before I put my hand up and ask for one. If there is a concrete problem, let us know. We can pick up the phone to a consultant and deal with it tomorrow, not a year plus from now when an inspection report is complete. That being said, I am in agreement of allowing this group, or anyone else for that matter, to come forward with more specific information so we can properly evaluate this request. At this time, I'm not comfortable agreeing to a municipal inspection in the absence of much more concrete information. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess I take objection to the fact that he's saying that we don't have transparency. I would like some time to hear from Spencer how many open houses we've had, how much public engagement we've had. I think we've gone over and above our call of duty. I'm not expecting any answers right now, Kaylin, but at some point in time, if we can get that figure, I think that we've gone over and above what's required as far as public engagement. And also, as I expressed my concern, Ryan, regarding the school possibly jeopardizing the high school, it's these same players that are involved in the citizens group that appear to be the same players that have been opposing the site that was selected for the joint high school-rec center. We've been dealing with these same residents all back to 2017 when we annexed new land into town of Coaldale. The school site has undergone rigorous reviews by many experts. It has been reviewed by the school district. It has been reviewed by departments of education and infrastructure. We have exceeded in so many areas the minimum due diligence requirements of such an undertaking. I am proud of the fact that we as a council worked so hard to get a high school for Coaldale. This has been needed for years. Unfortunately, there is a vocal minority that appears very motivated to derail a new school being built in this town. We declined the citizens group to halt all capital projects this council term. We feel like the request for an inspection is just the latest tactic that they're using. Members of this group have written letters to the Minister of Education, Palliser School Division, and to the Ombudsman Office. These agencies have consistently stated that we have done proper diligence and that we have met all of our obligations. We have been praised for depth of thought we have put into our joint high school recreation center. We're not willing to stop the momentum on this project.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Recognize you for further discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. As to Councillor Lloyd's statement, my son came home from his first day of high school, and he said to me, "Mom, I know why you guys are working so hard for a new high school." So that there alone should tell us how badly that is needed. The other comments I have are, councils are elected to make difficult and potential controversial decisions, including decisions with long-term budgetary, tax, and planning consequences. We do consider generations from today when we make our decisions. These decisions are considered so important by legislation that the budgetary, taxing, and planning issues are generally exempt from the MGA's public petition process as described in parts 8 and 17 of the MGA, where citizens are opposed to decisions made by council in these matters. The appropriate method for changing such decisions is a municipal election. I am, however, very much in favor of accountability and performance improvement. Speaking for myself, I'd be open to hire a consultant to come in and assess the performance of this organization and to see where we could trim costs and analyze and improve on the delivery of our services. But I'd have to see the cost of doing this, as well as the staff time required, so we can analyze the costs versus the benefit. On the other hand, this is something our administration already does on a regular basis, so it may just be redundant. Thank you.
Jerome.
I am not in favor of us hiring our own consultant to come in and look for cost savings. I don't believe that is what this group is asking for. This group is asking for a deeper look within the governance and the operations and how decision-making is being done. I'm not saying we are doing it wrong, but to hire a consultant to come in and see if we can find some nickels and dimes someplace, that's not what this group is asking for. So that I would not be in favor of at all. In fact, I believe that would give this group even more ammunition to say, see, they won't go to the municipal government to have a total review done, which is done on any town across the entire province. They're going to hire their own consultants so they can tell their own consultant what to look for and what not to look for. So to hire our own consultant, I think, is a no-starter in my mind. Maybe it is for others, but in my mind, I would be strongly against that. We've heard a lot tonight, both from Mr. Van Ryan and others around the table. And right now, I'm caught a little bit, and I would like to put forward a motion to table any further discussion on this until our following meeting, so we'll have a chance to digest what we've heard. I'm also going to request that we get a copy of Mr. Van Ryan's presentation, if he's could give that to us, so that we can actually individually look through what he wrote and make some of our own thoughts and feelings on it. I know we were all kind of, I guess, pushing back before he opened his mouth as what was going to come out of it. At least I was. And I'm not going to hide that. I wasn't prepared to really listen tonight. I would like to be able to read that, table any further discussions on this, and come back 2 weeks from now or when our next meeting is to have some further discussions on it. Thank you. So that's my motion, is to table any further discussion.
So tabling motion is non-debatable, so I will call the question on the motion to table. All in favor? Okay. Okay. No, it's not debatable, so, okay, so on the count of three, I'll call the question. On the tabling motion, 1, 2, 3, all in favor? And that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor and opposed. And that's carried. Did you table it to a certain date then? Or,
Just a question, do we need another motion requesting a copy of Mr. Van Ryan's presentation, or can we just have administration send that to us? Thank you.
Question through the chair. So prior to the delegation, administration did reach out and ask for this information already. We put into the agenda package what it is that we received. Is the request to receive the additional speaking points content that he presented at this meeting that's over and above what was actually in the agenda package?
I believe that Mr. Van Ryan was reading from a prepared statement, and I'd like to have a copy of that statement because we won't be seeing the minutes until after, or basically during our next discussion or next meeting.
Yep.
Can you say that?
Mr. Van Ryan, if we could get his speaking notes and have them shared with council.
Okay, pardon me? Go ahead, Lana.
Mr. Van Ryan emailed me his notes at the conclusion of his statement when he left, and I have already emailed them to all of you.
Okay, thank you. So now, unless I'm mistaken, we're on 8.1. And I would really welcome our Jason Siemens to the table and turn the floor over to him.
Thank you. So the objective of the agenda item report is to provide an update regarding the status of the Phase 1 pathway expansion and connectivity project. So Melanie and myself have prepared this update, and in addition to the analysis within the agenda item report, have prepared a brief slideshow presentation of the content. Okay, so it's my understanding that this is the first update provided to council on the project. So the overview is to provide an update on the Pathways project as well as the wayfinding strategy. So I will provide the update on the Pathway project. Melanie will cover the wayfinding strategy. Okay, so the project status. The project team consists of in-house and contracted services. So we have completed in-house engineering, surveying, and contract administration under the direction of both the infrastructure and engineering and planning and community development departments. Day-to-day staff is myself, Clayton Tillman, and Melanie is administering the wayfinding strategy. The status of the project, construction began late July, early August of this year. Latest projections from our contractor is completion by mid to late October of this year. Safety, no known incidents reported from our contractor. Our main safety concern at this point is maintaining the site safeguards on site until the project is complete. The biggest thing is not having any unprotected intersections until the appropriate signage is up. So construction progress to date consists of topsoil stripping and clearing, site earthworks and grading. The three photos kind of give you a somewhat of an idea of the scope of that work.
The photo on the left would be some of the site grading, basically minor grading to allow for the path on grade construction and to limit longitudinal pathway grades to approximately 5% or less. The other two photos, topsoil stripping and site clearing. In addition to topsoil stripping, some minor tree pruning and a couple removals were required to facilitate the work. The majority of the work is the paved and gravel pathway construction. So in the photos from left to right, we can kind of see the progression of work, starting with the subgrade prep on the left, which basically involves conditioning, moisture conditioning and compacting the existing native subgrade materials. Next photo is base granular material being placed to a typical thickness of 6 inches. The next photo being the asphalt prime coat applied just before paving, and the last photo being of the hot mix asphalt pavement being applied, typical thickness of 3 inches. Also completed to date, concrete sidewalks and ramps. All concrete work other than a portion of 2 ramps is complete. Right here we got the minor road extension at 30th Avenue and 20th intersection. That actually has not quite been completed, but is on the immediate schedule to get that completed. Some remaining items, in addition to that intersection extension to accommodate the pedestrian crossing, includes landscaping. Landscaping mostly consists of restoring the area immediately adjacent to the pathway to pre-existing conditions, primarily grass and gravel. Site safety and safeguard measures consisting of the rectangular rapid flashing beacon systems, the RFB systems. We have 2 of those in total going in at both highway crossings. All other intersections will be protected with intersection signage and crosswalks, and painted lane delineation. This mostly applies to 30th Avenue, where we will be applying painted lane delineations to separate the vehicle traffic from the new pedestrian active modes user lane. Further to the site safety, we have the swing gates. Main purpose of the swing gates is to prevent unwanted vehicle traffic from the path, from entering the path. However, the swing gates do open to allow maintenance, snow removal type equipment onto the paths when necessary. Painted lane delineation, sorry, that's a duplicate there. Also would be the finished grading, so basically cleaning up the edges of the pathway from what you see them now to eliminate any potential trip fall hazards on that edge of pathway. Furthermore, we have the Cottonwood Drive irrigation system restoration. So basically we installed proper pipe conduit sleeves prior to paving to allow for that irrigation system to be retrofitted to the new pathway. Depending on scheduling, that work may be completed in fall or in that spring or during spring startup of the irrigation system in the area. Due to I guess budget considerations, we are looking at completing some work in-house, which will be through fall and into spring. Mainly consisting of the site amenities, being benches and the dog waste receptacle systems, and the wayfinding strategy, basically the wayfinding signage. So the project summary. We do anticipate the project to come in under budget. And of course, we can provide a full detailed budget debrief upon project completion. The project outcome appears to be largely successful. We anticipate the full phase 1 tendered project scope will be completed. Community feedback engagement. So some of the more informal feedback we received thus far, phone calls, emails, just coming across people on site. The majority has been very positive. It appears that a lot of residents are already enjoying the portions of the completed path. Some of the less favorable feedback we have received thus far, I kind of categorize it into 3 groups. Basically, we have the ongoing concerns with 30th Avenue, the increased traffic volume along 30th Avenue, and the potential conflicts with the active mode users, and the ongoing development which could further exaggerate that concern. Also, some less, I guess, haven't had as many complaints on this one, but the proximity to the pathway of existing residents, mainly backyards. So we had a few concerns from 9th Street residents, as well as one of the residents near the campground with the proximity of the pathway to their yards. And I guess the third one is why pathways. A few people have voiced the concern of why pathways and not core infrastructure such as the road in front of their house. So with that community feedback, we do have continued engagement planned, particularly regarding the issue along 30th Avenue. So key considerations moving forward, we do anticipate the project to be on budget and on time. Feedback thus far appears largely positive. Future considerations, so potential additions to this phase of the work could include an 8th Street connection between the current termination at the canal to the Christian school, and further additional 30th Avenue upgrades. Some planning considerations to go with that, design and site constraints, community development and growth planning, budget, and then other potential phases which have been identified include the South Malloy area, 16th Avenue, and 18th Avenue.
So the wayfinding strategy is an operational component of the Pathways Expansion Project. Research showed successful wayfinding signage incorporated directional signage, place identification, clearly defined pathways and streets, and visual cues. To ensure effectiveness, the initial implementation of signage will be temporary and considered a pilot. This will allow an extended time frame for users to provide feedback, which will be used to improve the signage system. Clearly defined objectives allowed us an opportunity to customize a wayfinding strategy that was appropriate for Coaldale's context, including identifying and connecting spaces, easing navigation of our pathways network, building a confidence to walk, reducing a reliance on vehicle transportation, stimulating economic growth, and encouraging exploration. A total of 16 sites were identified along the pathways network. This included both existing and newly constructed pathways. Sites are located at entry and exit points of pathways and parks and schools in close proximity to the pathways network. Sites are located, 4 types of signage make up the pathways portion of the wayfinding strategy. A variety of signage types were based on the needs of each individual site and effectively communicating pathways and nearby amenities. Signage types consist of directional, informational, signage, which identify to the user where they are and which direction to take. Through consultation with the City of Edmonton surrounding their temporary wayfinding signage, it was determined that aluminum signage was the most value-based option. This material is robust, can withstand high kilometer winds, and is more tolerable against vandalism. Corners of aluminum signage can be sharp, and as a result, they will be custom cut to ensure safety. Additionally, temporary signage can be repurposed and reused in the future by removing the vinyl layer and reprinting the sign with new information. Estimated walking and arrival times are intended to promote walkability by removing and navigation of our expanded pathways network. To promote accessibility, the colors selected for the signage are legible to individuals with color vision deficiency. Feedback gathered from the pilot phase will be used to inform signage adaptations, while a summary of feedback will be provided in the spring. The pilot does not have a typical timeline, as users will have an opportunity to engage over different seasons to ensure a variety of perspectives.
The feedback will help to inform the transition into permanent signage and can further be reviewed in the deliberations of the 2021 to 2022 budget. Finally, it is important to note that additional locations for signage will be located along Main Street once construction is completed. Signs will be located at 17th Street, 18th Street, and 19th Street. These signs will include a categorized list of businesses to ensure downtown is legible for both residents and visitors. And that concludes our report. I return it to the floor to council.
Questions through to our presenters? Councillor Simpson?
So the one question that everybody has is, when is the lines going to be printed on the 845 for the crosswalk between between 30th Avenue and Cottonwood Drive?
Okay, so I think the idea with that intersection is there is a requirement to have a traffic accommodation submitted to complete all the upgrades in that intersection. So it's likely that it'll all come together very fast. The RFBs will go up, the zebra crosswalks will go up, and a lot of that will happen all at once in a short period of time. So we did get the latest schedule from the contractor, was to complete by October 21st. So I'd imagine we'd see that within the next couple of weeks, pending any further delays.
Councillor Chapman had his light, and then Councillor Holm, and then who else was in the queue? Okay. And Councillor Lloyd after Councillor Holm then.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you so much for your presentation and your update on pathways and wayfinding. I think that's just a tremendous opportunity for Coaldale. I'm in full support of all your thoughts and your ideas moving forward. My wife and I took a bike ride yesterday afternoon. I might digress for a moment, and it was just really so cool just to ride that full pathway all along there. As we were riding our bikes down the pathway, this golf cart came right by me the other way and was on its own merry way. And so I don't know if we're planning to try to do some control, and I think bylaw may have some thoughts moving forward in that. My only question to you is, there's the two bridges, one going across to Cotton, which is just really nice. The other bridge, which is the one that goes into the quads, I imagine you're probably going to be planning to update it or repair or change it so that it's way more user-friendly for our commuters.
Yeah, I know we have looked at the second bridge crossing, and I know there has been some discussions on whether we refurbish the bridge, repaint the bridge, redeck the bridge. I know we're definitely looking at cleaning up the approaches onto the bridge, so you're not having to step up onto it, clean up those gravel surfaces there. So at this time, I don't believe we've made a formal decision on what we're going to do there. Nothing is planned for this phase of the project, but that is something we could certainly consider. As far as the unwanted traffic, one thing I did miss in the presentation too is the addition of the post and chain fence on top of the swing gate. So that should also help once that is up to make it a lot harder for people to get onto the path. Ultimately, I think if people really want to get onto the path, they're probably still going to do so one way or another. So there'll definitely could potentially be some additional enforcement required there as well. And that's not to say the measures we're adding at this phase are the final measures. We're kind of taking the hot spots that we see and trying to address them all now, but we could always add in the future as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, just one quick question on it. So I live right next to the path and use it every single day and night. I have a dog that needs to go all the time. Question from our part of the community down there, is it going to be snow removal? Because it is being used so well right now that people are already asked the question. We don't want to stop when the first snowfall comes, so I'm just asking, Is it the plan to grade that entire pathway in the wintertime?
My understanding is yes, I believe we are. I'm not quite sure of the prioritization of that yet, but likewise with our other paths and our other green areas, my understanding is yes, that we will be plowing those and taking care of snow removal.
That would be terrific, because I know they are doing it through Millennium Park and everything throughout the winter, so I would hope that they would do that too.
Yes,
Thank you.
Just add to the discussion through the chair. That's exactly, this will be a high priority pedestrian route that will have snow clearing, as Mr. Siemens pointed out. So it's good to hear it's being well used, and hopefully it's well used year round.
And then Councillor Lloyd?
There are a couple of hundred people that have been riding bike up and down. It's great. I just have one question about your gate, your swinging gate. Does it come across the whole path?
Yeah, so the one at the is it Centennial, right? The Centennial Park. That one is pretty typical of what you'll see here. So the posts themselves are roughly 4 meters apart, but the opening size is about 1.8 meters or 6 feet. So it would be very difficult to squeeze through there unless you're in a tiny vehicle. But there are some hinges that allow those to swing open to the full 4 meter opening, so you could get a maintenance truck down there or whatever we need for maintenance. But typical opening size is limited to 6 feet, which
6 feet?
6 feet.
So I could get through there with my bike.
Yeah, for sure.
That's
Yeah,
my question.
between the permanent opening is 6 feet and the larger opening, it can be opened wider.
Okay.
To 4 meters, yeah.
Thank you. So anyway, in Centennial Park there, I noticed if there's some, on the shoulders, kind of like near the edge of the path, there seems to be a lot of cracking and the asphalt kind of falling away a bit. Is that a warranty issue, or is there an issue with the actual?
I feel like maybe that's something we should definitely take a closer look at. With this phase of construction, the subgrade and base gravel is typically overbuilt from that edge of the pathway to prevent that type of cracking on the edges. But certainly that is something we could still look at. Typical warranty period on this type of project is usually 2 years, sometimes 1, so we could certainly have a look at that.
Yeah, I suggest you look at it because it is seeming to go off.
The edge is likely to crack first, but with the overbuilt the base material, it shouldn't be too noticeable of an issue.
Okay, the presentation and it takes a lot of time, and good luck on the wayfinding feedback and that, and maybe you'll get some responses on that saying don't allow golf carts or something like that. But Councillor Holm, I think you were gonna press. Okay. Councillor Holm moves for information. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So, thank you very much. And then we have item 9, there's nothing there. And item number 10.1, we have a letter from opposition to Minister Shandro regarding centralization. And I commend big city mayors for their activity on this file. The only concern that I have is listening to it, they don't necessarily add the nuances that a smaller community like Coaldale will have in the whole service and that. So I think that we have a meeting with Minister Hunter coming up, and we can share with him how the nuances impact Coaldale. And I don't believe that the cost saving that is proposed by the government is beneficial when compared to the potentiality of loss of life or degradation of health by having a very confused system for the Coaldale residents. But so we can probably, unless there's any questions, we can receive that letter for information. Councillor Chapman moves that. All in favor? Okay. And 10.2, letter from Clive Shopmeyer, Citizens for a Better Coaldale. Councillor Simpson.
So with that, I actually have a question for 10.2 for the survey, and that's directed towards Kaylin. When I've read some of the questions, I felt it was somewhat biased. So could you tell me a little bit of the technicality of the actual survey and the questions, if they were, you know, followed correctly along the path to be an unbiased question?
Chair to Councillor Simpson. I did review the materials. The Citizens for a Better Coaldale group did put some methodological disclaimers in here. You know, they weren't claiming this was scientific. What I will say, though, is that, you know, you look at the package and the construction of the questions, I would caution against drawing strong conclusions from the data, because a lot of the questions contained biased or leading preambles to a question, and that tends to lead people to answer questions a certain way. That would be against best practice in terms of basic survey methodology and the neutral construction of questions. A professional polling firm would never frame a question in that manner because it would be against best practice and the social science behind getting good data to lead with an opinion or the predisposition of the survey writer and then ask a question following that. The secondary issue to that survey is that it was administered by a partisan type group, and so you put the type of question and you add that to the type of group that's asking it, and there's a likelihood that you're going to get a disproportionate amount of responses from people that tend to agree more with what their position is. So those are, you know, in terms of the actual questions themselves, that would be my comment. There's a few other items in the package that I think are, you know, worth noting. On page 179 of our agenda package, and that's page 5 of Mr. Shopmeyer's letter, you know, question 3, you know, we believe in part that the town's wildly ambitious population projections were used to falsely justify a school and recreation center. Okay, that was thank you for that opinion, but I think that the important thing to say is that in the reference there in the footnote, it was to page 30. When you look at the actual, let me just find it here. Yeah, so page 130 in the document that we created, that was a labeling error in terms of the projection here that the town claims that between the year 2020 and the year 2025, there will be 3,000 to 4,000 people living in the northwest part of Coaldale. That's never been a claim that we made. There is a labeling error, however, on page 30, which is an appendix in that document that we can remove, so I appreciate that attention to detail, and we can simply adjust the report and correct that. But if you look at the body of all the work that we've done, stemming back to the growth study, to annexation, followed by the feasibility analysis, leading up to the purchase of the land, followed by the school site, that has never been a claim that we've used in any of our detailed reports, so that's a misnomer that we'll fix. At no point in any other document has that been something that we've held our hat on. That would suggest that 800 people per year are going to live on the north side. That is an absurd number, and that's not a number that we've ever put forward as realistic or even anticipated in any of our technical work. So I wanted to point that out. The last comment that I wanted to make in reviewing the submissions here, there's a bit of a concern in the content here that some of the claims are advanced, that are advanced in the letter or the submission, resemble what's called a straw man argument, where you cherry pick certain elements of work that we've produced selectively out of context, and then you tear it apart with your argument and draw strong conclusions from that. And so, you know, a lot of the, some of the comments here, I would say there's an inaccuracy, or there's so much more information around the comment that was selectively put in here, and the answers to those selected comments are answered in the full report. So I would say that there was a sense of some straw man constructions to help bolster the position being advanced by the writer. And as a for instance, one of the questions was saying that about growth north is going to trigger a number of different intersectional upgrades, which is going to add an extra expense, so therefore go south. That's not accurate. We've been consistent from day one, and this comes from Alberta Transportation, that any growth, additional growth on the north or the south side of the highway is going to trigger intersectional improvements. So I don't want to go through line by line, because a lot of these matters have been discussed before. A lot of the answers to the queries or questions have already been provided. I just provided a bit of a sample based on viewing the material that was provided. And at this time, I'll turn it back to council on where to go from here in terms of the information provided.
Councillor Holm?
Wondering, because Mr. Schoppmeyer has seemed to have taken a lot of time to put this together, I'm wondering if somebody should not be reaching out to him, and maybe one or two council members or administration council members send him a note requesting a chance to sit down and chat with him about it. They want public consultation and stuff. Why would we not make that offer?
Well, that's a great suggestion. I guess I would also couch that by saying, why did he not say, I have this all prepared, and before, I am going to submit it to council, but I want to share it with you and get your comments before. It can work both ways, and it's, in my tenure as mayor and as on council, many residents have never been shy about, reaching out and talking about stuff, and that, as opposed to, I think this harkens back to my statement of last meeting, where we try to engage people, and as we're engaging, there's a press release being prepared and dropped to the media before we even have an honest chance in that. So it is, like, communication is effective, but it is both ways in that. So I take your suggestion to heart. But anybody else? Councillor Lloyd? Kalen? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one point. I have no issues with speaking or meeting with Mr. Schoppmeyer. I've attended coffee at his home several times to talk about different issues over the past. He makes a really good cup of coffee, and I wouldn't have any issues chatting with him. I don't know if that's something or an offer that he would take us up on, but it's certainly something that we've done in the past, and we've had good discussions before, so I don't see any reason why he may not want to do that again.
Worship, I agree with what Councillor Holm was saying. I think we should reach out, and if Kalen's willing to attend a meeting with him and a couple members from council, let's listen to him. Well, we've got to, let's take the high road rather than the flinging the dirt road, and let's hear our residents out.
Councillor Holm?
Here to be one of those council members.
Okay, so we have Councillor Chapman and Councillor Holm that will be delighted to take Clive up on a tremendous cup of coffee if he so chooses. Your direction with respect to the letter? Councillor Holm?
the letter for information.
Okay, we have a motion by Councillor Holm to receive the letter for information. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? That's carried. And it looks like Butch's group has been busy, and we have a bunch of information items. Councillor Pauls, do you have anything that you want to add to any of these reports, or? Okay, Councillor Pauls moves receipt of all the items in section 11 for information. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That's carried. And now we're at the end of the public portion of the meeting, and we will entertain a motion to go in camera. Councillor Simpson moves that. All in favor? Okay, that's carried.